this is a thing I do sometimes. Welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Bosworth, theater person, candy enthusiast, and proud owner of one incomplete list of 3 niches. Here on my Undergraduate Minor, I invite you to join me on a little detour from my life's work. Whether ADD or OCD, sometimes I just have to look into a subject, and I'm usually reminded that people are weird. I mean, on the Slinky to Furby scale, we're usually trending a solid gack. Speaking of Furbies, most of America isn't actually learning from its surroundings either. As of this recording, we're in the haha JK phase of reopening, though I am not LOLing. Though I am LOLing. We're all in the process of learning one of 2 things right now. That the world is a castle built on sand, or that somebody staffed that castle entirely with court jesters. A few of my friends and I have remarked more than once lately that we're old. I mean, I feel young, but then again I just made a Furby joke. It won't be long before I'm going to have to answer to a younger generation about the kind of world that they're inheriting, and I don't look forward to it.
It was at that very second I decided I couldn't stay 1 second longer in that place, and I took you kids away to this cave in the wilderness, where you can be safe, and I can raise you in peace.
Who's that finishing the episode?
Oh, that? It's a super realistic android. If you listen closely, he only breathes in through one nostril. See if you can figure out which one.
Humility is an unsexy but critical part of the process. It's like gut bacteria. Now I think you'll agree, this is one prokaryote in severe need of a glow-up. Oh, honey. So let's take a look at some particularly humble eureka moments I've experienced lately. This is Minor Revelations. I'm on the fence about getting rid of my CD collection. I was reminded the other day that while durable, CDs indeed have a shelf life, though I was reassured that if the materials are quality, it's not a big deal. So glad that planned obsolescence really only hit its stride with the debut of the iPod. But I was surprised when I looked in a CD portfolio I hadn't opened in a while, and found that some of my NSYNC CDs had in fact dropped in quality. My Red Hot Chili Peppers CDs seem to have softened, doesn't sound as sharp as they used to. And a good number of my audiobooks have succumbed to CD bronzing. We all learned that J.K. Rowling is a tool. Where's that Larry Potter lady now? Tell her she's got the job. If you need to hate on something, instead of a subset of people just living their lives, stick to something universally agreed upon to be vile. Toe socks. Shout out to Toppy Socks for knowing when to quit while you're ahead. We recently looked into a new apartment, and along the way, my wife asked if I had verified the square footage in units where it was listed. I had typically only done the math where the landlord had convinced themselves square footage is a major secret. That's when I found out that square footage is a lie most of the time. They're counting closets, cabinets, extra thick walls to make themselves seem bigger. A fun reminder that in olden times, landowners were men. Speaking of people acting more important than they actually are, let's talk about the Peerage of Great Britain and beyond. This is the elective. Now, anybody with passing familiarity with Shakespeare's histories knows that there's a fabulous parade of Dukes of Suffolk and Earls of Lancaster and what have you. In a given play, it's usually not an issue. But look a little closer at these nobles across a few plays, and you'd be forgiven for being super lost. No. Titles recur, in addition to common Englandy names like John and William. So what's going on there? I mean, once they got past the whole Merlin thing, it was pure logic from sunup to sundown at Buckingham, right? Most folks have some understanding that the monarch had some kind of entourage made up of various lords. And this was of course true in many of the European monarchies, and they bear a lot of similarities. The structure is pretty uniform. You've got your dukes, earls, barons, toss in viscounts, possibly confusing because lady earls are countesses, but okay. But there I was, minding my own business, playing Pokemon X a few years back when they dropped this science on me. What? little did I know that my understanding was about to evolve. See, that's the lady version. Men's version? Okay, that looks familiar. Right, I've heard of that one. It's French. Marquess must be minor. That's why I've never heard of it. So, let's get it up on the board. Oh, what? Second highest. In Britain, it's second only to Duke. The funny story is nobody likes them. During the period of Shakespeare's histories, there were only a half dozen or so marquessate created, and a lot of them were dead by the time that period was over. The Marquess of Dorset is in Richard III, but even there he's typically styled Marquis. A true Shakespearean insult. In Britain, you could only have one of each title, but in Spain, you could collect them all. Usually just for bragging rights, except for that one dude who insists on being addressed with full honors. Aside from the right to be hoity and or toity, what on earth did they do? I'm glad you asked. The major European powers had similar systems. By and large, it all came from feudalism and land ownership, so they managed estates. Lots of them rose out of military fame, of course. It paid to become a lord early. Quotas for putting heads on pikes got brutal later. As time went on, as you might guess, monarchs got more generous with creating new lords. They started using letters patent to invent them. The last German king, Wilhelm II, for example, had a tendency to grant blanket nobility to entire branches of a family. Your stepfather may not be dad, but if you conquer Portugal, he's sure as hell gonna be duke. And now you'll have so much in common, son! Researchers looked at 700 or so of his last and found 5 who gained titles for bureaucratic service. To be fair, the guy that maintained the firewalls back then had a much harder job. Honestly, I just imagine he found it funny to have more counts in payroll.
We thought it was hilarious!
Germany, Italy, and France have abolished their nobilities in their various messy periods. Britain's still got it, so it's perhaps the most culturally relevant. But please, can we go back to France back in the day? The French peerage basically started as 12 dudes, 6 church lords, and 6 secular lords. Some say it was an echo of Jesus' 12 disciples, but it did come in handy for pickup basketball games too. The peers had a few interesting responsibilities. During coronations, for example, the French king played a little fast and loose with his nobles here. If for one reason or another a lord was unavailable, or a particular title was vacant, a different lord would basically serve as understudy. Occasionally this meant that one lord, pretending to be another lord, would take umbrage with his fake status, among other lords, who sometimes were pretending to be other lords too. That's a pun, and a double entendre. After coronation, the peers would kiss the new monarch in turn. Now, any actor who's been in the room at the same time as other actors in a callback know that this is not a good idea. You see what the lord ahead of you did, and there's pressure to set yourself apart. First lord pecks the cheek. Next lays a nice one on the forehead. By the time you're up to number 9, you gotta give a little tongue if nobody has yet. And 12 is using their special tickle technique that scandalized Finistère.
How do you think I got my peerage in the first place?
But it gets better. The French monarch ceremonialized his own waking up in the morning, the lever, and select lords would attend him, maybe give him a hand. If you were lucky, you could slip a request in to the king first thing in the morning. Unlucky, and maybe you were selected for the obscuring of the imperial morning wood. This ceremony became known as the petit lever, because they had a more elaborate one later, he swears. Fun fact, the king may have already been awake, and would return to bed for the ceremony. The keeping time was very important because if early morning hunting went on too long and he had to rush back to the bedchamber, then...
Regardez moi waking up for the first time. Who put this here? Deal with this. What is the business aujourd'hui?
Not so sadly. Those days are gone. Even the Brits, who nominally still have the peerage, took away the right for hereditary peers to comprise the House of Lords in the 90s. You can't even count on a summary beheading for cheeky behavior. But I'm sure it's not out of the question. You're on notice, Viscount of Trosbury. You owe me 18 quid, and I have friends in high places. Cool, let's take threaten an aristocrat off the to-do list. Great. Hey, one more segment, and I get a personal pan pizza. Score. Let's do this. Stuck at home, I've started learning Italian on Duolingo. It's simple, and I've always wanted to speak a second language. To make a few bucks, I took on some work at Duolingo as a cultural ambassador. My job is to help check the work of a student learning English as it comes in. I was assigned to a young man, Martino, from the remote village of Ciambuca in Italy. Now, they have some strange customs, so I wanted to clear up some of his wrong answers. This is Off Course, of Course.
First, the Italian. Io sempre ho creduto in te. Now, of course, the answer is, I have always believed in you. Unfortunately, Martino put, I have always believed in birds.
Avian migration in his region is considered unusual, with centuries of throwing stones into the air to end conversations. You throw the rock straight upward, count to your age, and if the rock lands right where you were standing, until the conversation's terminated, legally that rock is you, and you can leave. With one of the longest life expectancies in the world, there are lots of elderly folks chucking rocks to ridiculous heights to avoid discussing the latest social media app with some gold-darn youngster. This also means that oldsters are constantly carrying loads of stones, so they're buff as hell, making Ciambuca the world's top exporter of geriatric foosball and table tennis ringers. Anyway, birds avoid the area and people tend to think they're myths. Next.
The Italian, leggiamo il giornale locale. We read the local newspaper. Now, Martino put, we read the soup newspaper.
Are you up to speed on the latest developments in minestrone science? Print media may be in decline, but in Ciambuca, widespread literacy, and the inexplicable prevalence of paper airplanes, means that many alternative publications thrive. Indeed, the Funlightenment has passed most of the world over, and chowder innovation remains sadly confined to this village's shores. I pity the Fujul-e who doesn't search out this rag and revolutionize their ramen today. Next.
Il rapporto che abbiamo prodotto è diverso. The answer? The report we produced is different. Now, Martino put, the report we produced is cakes.
Hey, the village may be remote, but they love a good meme. Next.
Puoi dimostrare come suonare il violino? Which means, can you demonstrate how to play the violin? Unfortunately, he put, can you demonstrate how to knife the violin?
Lots of people remember Hendrix setting fire to his guitars, but few know that he was trying to capture some of that Ciambuca magic. See, in 1699, Antonio Stradivari was in Ciambuca, and was inspired to revise his long instrument design when a noble Ciambucan was able to knock out an assailant from a safe distance with the violin that he was carrying. A Stradivarius, while it doesn't necessarily sound better than other instruments when played, sounds heavenly when smashed to pieces. That's why they're so valuable. Ciambucans destroy any that they find. But everyday folk can enjoy the cleavering of a cello on a regular basis, now its own art form there. That's enough for today. We wish Martino all the best, and have preemptively filed a restraining order banning him from the New York Philharmonic. You're welcome. My friends, that was the show. You watched it. Congratulations. Reward yourself by subscribing to my channel. Check out the previous episode and sample some, or all, of my absurd podcast with Diamond Tier friend Michael Williams. Support content by people who are not already famous. Let me know in the comments if you are hashtag Team Toity or hashtag Hoity Homies, so that we can settle that once and for all. I've also returned to Twitter for chuckle-inducing purposes. And no, I'm not going to change my traditional handle. I love this one. Thank you. And remember, the foundation of a great society is learning. About patriarchy and systemic racism. Oh, you don't like that? I'm sorry, I'm out of time. Please go research it.
And now, kids, as part of your wilderness training, we have another lesson from Alpha.
I don't think she...
Don't interrupt Alpha while she's thinking.